And so you went to space 3 times?
Yes. Yeah, I had 3 shuttle flights, 3 shuttle missions. We all have rocks in our rucksack. Some people carry pebbles around with them. Some people carry boulders around in their rucksack. And you never know what they have in their rucksack. Good habits, once you get into them, you start to enjoy them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like you can do the same with bad habits too, right? I mean, I think at the end of the day, leadership's leadership.
Today, we're joined by General Kevin Chilton, former astronaut and commander of America's nuclear forces at U.S. Strategic Command, to explore leadership under immense responsibility. Welcome to the 11 Talents Podcast.
So General Kevin Chilton, you're known, I think, to the Catholic audience, most notably as the astronaut, one of the astronauts that brought the Eucharist to space. And I'm going to get into all of that because your story is an amazing one. It's been such a privilege to get to know you and your wife. I think you're the only power couple I know that have 2 generals standing at the top of the family tree there.
Well, there's a couple others in the Air Force, but yeah, Kathy's a senior ranking general at home for sure. It's great to be with you, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
So I think a lot of people who think of the Air Force think, oh, everybody's a pilot that goes to the Air Force Academy.
No,
but
yeah.
I mean, isn't it like 10% maybe or even less?
No, so when I joined, the Vietnam War was still on. It ended spring semester my freshman year, but in the fall, that summer when I joined, it was still going on, and with no end in sight, actually. And in those days, there was such a need for pilots, I think, and navigators. I think my class, which entered with 1,500 students, 85% of us were either pilot or navigator qualified.
Oh, wow, okay.
And if you wanted to go to flight school and were physically fit and passed the screening test flying a little Cessna there, you went. And there was no competition for it. They needed the people. Now I think they're bringing in about 1,000 cadets a year, and they have somewhere between 400 and 500 slots, and it's competitive to go.
40 to 50% are still pilot.
Yeah.
Wow. And so did you meet Kathy at the Air Force Academy?
No. Kathy and I met on active duty.
Okay.
And so I graduated in 1976, and 3 operational assignments in different bases, and then applied to go to the Air Force Test Pilot School, which, again, this was something I hadn't planned on doing, but when I was a cadet, I had been sent for 6 weeks out to Edwards one summer to work on a test project out there. It's kind of an internship.
Yeah, okay. And
I met these guys called test pilots, and they were all flying really cool jets.
I mean, it sounds kind of Evel Knievel-ish. Is that? Am I picturing it correctly? Like,
it's not Evel Knievel. There's a little more calculation that goes into calculating, but yeah, they were all engineers, and I was an engineering major, so that lined up. It just serendipitous or providential that I had chosen engineering, and then I went there and I found out, well, to be a test pilot, you have to have an engineering degree. You have to fly multiple different kinds of airplanes. I had by that time. So I applied, and I thought, well, after that, I'll go see if I can be an airline pilot. And so January of 84, I started test pilot school, which is a year-long school, and there was 25 students in the class and only 1 girl. And that girl's my wife now.
Wow.
Kathy, yeah.
That's beautiful.
And she's a flight test engineer. So about half a dozen of the students in the class were engineers because they had to learn how to do tests as well. Design tests, take the data, write the reports. And the rest of us were the pilots. And so we all went together as a cohort. And it was a great year.
Wow. So what did you most enjoy flying before test school and then during?
Well, actually, my favorite airplane was the F-15.
Okay.
I just really loved flying that airplane. I loved the mission. In those days, it was just an air-to-air platform. We didn't drop bombs. And the competition in the squadron, the camaraderie, the friends I made there, a lot of them are still close friends to this day. Yeah. So really enjoyed that mission.
So not to be too cliche, but this is very like Top Gun level.
Oh, far better.
Yeah, far better.
Far better.
Wow.
Of course.
It's pretty impressive.
Well, because I left the mainstream Air Force, I was still in the Air Force and went to NASA after graduating test pilot school and spending 2.5 years as a test pilot. Because of that break in service, I missed the opportunities to be a squadron commander, which would be like a company commander in the Marine Corps.
Okay.
And And of course, that's really your first big command in the Air Force. And then after that, you would compete for group command, which would be like a battalion.
Okay.
And then,
I appreciate you breaking it down Barney style for me.
Making this Marine Corps. And then wing command would be like a brigade. And so I missed those early command opportunities. And when I came, after being at NASA for 11 years, I came back, and that's a story in and of itself. My first opportunity, about 9 months after I'd returned, they gave me an opportunity to command a wing, which I thought, they were out of their minds. What were they thinking? I've been freeze-dried at NASA for 11 years. I come back and just had some great leaders who took a chance on me. And my first command then was the 9th Reconnaissance Wing at Beale Air Force Base in California, which is just a fabulous assignment with a great team out there flying the U-2 reconnaissance airplane all over the world. We had detachments in Europe and in Asia, and then home base was at Beale. And I just loved that group of people and the opportunity to do that. So, and then, no good deed goes unpunished. So my next assignment was to the Pentagon, and spent 5 years there, and then back to command again as a numbered Air Force commander of the mighty 8th Air Force. Storied history from World War II. If you've seen 12 O'Clock High or Fred Masters of the Air, or seen that was the 8th Air Force, and I had the great opportunity to command that for a short period of time. And then because I'd spent so much time in space, doing space things at NASA, they said, well, a logical opportunity would be to command Air Force Space Command. So I left 8th Air Force and went and commanded Air Force Space Command in Colorado Springs. And then my last command was Stratcom.
So talk a little bit about Air Force Command there. What does that entail?
Well, Air Force Space Command. We had all the at the time really all the Department of Defense space assets. We didn't have the National Reconnaissance assets, but we had the Department of Defense. So global communications, nuclear command and control from space. We had missile warning as part of that. We had a GPS constellation. And so all those space operations were being run by Air Force Space Command. Also at the time, they had brought the Intercontinental Ballistic Missile Force underneath that command. I guess because fire came out of the back end and the top ends were pointy, they thought there was some synergy there. But, so the three bases, on the northern tier in Wyoming and Montana and North Dakota were part of Air Force Space Command as well. So we had the nuclear mission and we had the space mission when I was there.
So is the I don't even know if it's a soldier or airman that's holding the football for the president. Is that going to you when that code
Not
is?
at Air Force Space Command. And no, even at Strategic Command, although we had oversight of all the nuclear deterrent in the United States, so submarine force, bomber force, and the missile force, our job was to make sure that they were ready. Of course, the services supported that as well. And then be part of assuring that the nuclear command and control infrastructure was in place such that the president could be informed and brought together with his team of advisors and make a decision and do what he had to do, just so that we were always postured to react to a threat to the United States.
And is this, are we talking 90s or early 2000s?
No, when I was at Strategic Command, I was there in 2007 to 2011.
Okay, so post 9/11.
Right.
I mean, what were the biggest threats that you were in terms of readiness?
We were deterring China and Russia.
So same story, first verse.
Yeah, it's changed though lately. At the time, China, based on their force size, was kind of a secondary adversary, if you will. They just weren't anywhere near as robust in their nuclear capability as the former Soviet Union, now Russia, by that time. In fact, we had done treaties with Russia to bring down total numbers dramatically from the Cold War. And so we had strategic stability, and China was kind of a lesser case. Well, China now is building up at some point in the not too distant future, will be a peer equivalent. And so that's going to be a whole new challenge for the future Stratcom commanders. The current commander of how do you deter two potential adversaries that hold an existential threat over your country. And at the end of the day, the reason we have these weapons is to deter. And that's number one job is deterrence. I tell young airmen and soldiers, sailors, and Marines that work for me that, and now Guardians, of course, they didn't exist when I was there, but dying for your country is not what we're here about. We're here to not fight wars, but to deter wars. Mm-hmm. And God forbid we have to fight, we fight.
Yeah. If you want peace, prepare for war.
That's right. So peace through strength. And that was kind of the motto of Strategic Air Command back in the day. Peace is our profession, and that's true.
So at what point in your career did you go from being, a pilot where you're, worrying about yourself and perhaps a co-pilot to a command where you have hundreds, thousands of military that are reporting to you, where you've got it's a different hat.
Yeah, no, I think at the end of the day, leadership's leadership. But command is precious and it's special because of the authorities you have over the people that work for you. You have court-martial authorities, you have non-judicial punishment authorities. We call them G-series orders, where you are, to certain levels of crimes or severe crimes.
Right.
You have the authority to punish, and you have the authority to recommend and convene court-martials. As the 8th Air Force commander, I had to review all the court-martial decisions that were taken by the wings that were under me. I had 10 wings in one group under my command, and I spent a lot of time on weekends going through court findings, and I could overrule a punishment or adjust it based on that. So, those kinds of burdens are different than flying an airplane.
Yeah.
and so but it's such a precious gift to have the opportunity to command, because in the essence of command, in my view, is to enable your team to excel.
Yeah.
And to build a team and be the leader who helps them be successful. Because at the end of the day, it's about getting the mission done. That's job one always.
Do you attribute your upbringing, your parents, to that leadership training, or do you attribute it to a course in the Air Force?
I think a combination of a lot of things. The Air Force Academy is where I learned about military-style leadership. And, people have always asked me, can you recommend a good book on leadership that you've read? And I go, no, because I am a student of leadership, but I more learn most from observing leaders, both good and bad. And, when you see, it's kind of like when you're a kid, you say, I grew up, I'm never going to be, mom gave me a spanking, I'll never do that to my kids. You're naive.
So which leader is your go-to?
Well, I've had some great ones. When my very first operational squadron was flying the RF-4, the reconnaissance version of the F-4 over on Kadena Air Base in Okinawa, Japan, and my flight commander was a guy named Major Bob Smith. He just passed away last year. Just a wonderful man, and he's probably the reason one of the reasons that I stayed in the Air Force as long as I did. At the start, remember, I was only going to do my 5 years and get out. And I had no idea what it was like in the Air Force. And this guy was just a terrific leader. He gave us a lot of rope. Occasionally we'd almost hang ourselves, but he's had our back and took care of us and mentored us. And then I had my second squadron commander was a gentleman named Ken Habedank. And he was a terrific leader. And I kind of tried to model some of my leadership philosophies after what I saw in him. And the interesting thing about him, and he's still alive, I love the man, is he did not believe anybody in his unit got up in the morning, put on their uniform, and looked in the mirror and said, how can I screw up today? He didn't believe it. To his core. And so if he asked young Lieutenant Chilton to do something, and young Lieutenant Chilton didn't successfully do what he asked him to do, I think the natural human reaction is to say, well, Lieutenant Chilton's is a no load. He's worthless. That wasn't Ken Habedank's reaction. His reaction was, I must not have been clear in my direction to Lieutenant Chilton. It's me. Because he believed Chilton got up that morning, put on his uniform, and looked in the mirror and said, I'm going to go to work and do my job, not I'm going to go to screw up. Wow. And that is totally against our human nature.
Yeah.
Particularly, when you tell your child or tell anybody to do something, you assume you are as clear as can be. But a lieutenant colonel, he says, go do this. What's the lieutenant going to say? Yes, sir. Yes. Salute smartly and about face and depart the room and walk out the door, and may say, I have no idea what he wants me to do. And then if he still failed, his next question was, have I trained him? Have I given him the right tools? It's on me as the leader to make sure they're trained and equipped to do what I'm asking them to do. Yeah. And if he's still not doing it right, is there something going on with his family? I know this is a good guy. I know I've trained him. I've equipped him. I know he understands my intent. Has he got a sick kid at home? Wife that's distracting him? What's going on? And that's what commanders in the Air Force are expected to do in the military, to know their people so well. Yeah. They even know them at that personal level that they can intervene and help in the home life if it needs to be done, or at least understand. And then he would jokingly say, and then if Chilton didn't do it, I'd have him taken out back and shot. Which was tongue in cheek. But I mean, think about that as a leadership philosophy. Yeah. It's me first. It's my failure as a leader, not that person's failure, because I believe in them. And I just think he hung the moon in my book.
Yeah, wow. When you speak to business groups, leadership, you mentioned you don't really refer to a book, but what's the attribute or the lesson that you are teaching them on how to be a good leader? They haven't experienced, most of them haven't experienced the military type training that we have, but what's your, vending machine advice here to?
Yeah, it's really short. There's two things. One, lead by the golden rule. It's pretty simple. Mm-hmm. I have a good friend. He and I were asked to give a talk on leadership at Notre Dame to a class there, and he and the teacher there sent us a note, said, "Can you recommend any books?" And of course, I couldn't, because I don't read a lot of books on leadership. My buddy Jim immediately wrote back, said, "Tell him to read the Bible. Greatest leader of all times in it, and the Gospels."
Wow. Greatest
leader of all times. Model yourself after Jesus Christ, and you'll be a great leader. He held people accountable. But he preached the golden rule.
And he led, and I think expected people to follow his word. But as you said, ensuring that he is instructing them well.
Yeah, and enabling them. Yeah. Enabling them to go off and do great things for what became the Catholic Church. And so, lead by the golden rule. And then I think there's another paradox that people talk about in leadership, and is what's more important, people or the mission? And particularly in the military, this is important, right? Because the people we can command to put their lives on the line, right? Or die in the country. So whenever I took command, this was the very first speech I gave in front of the command. I said, look, I'm a mission guy. We wear the uniform of our country. Our country expects us to do our mission. So that's number one. Okay. So there's no paradox in my mind. Mm-hmm. Mission is number one. However, I expect you guys to make time in your day to stay physically fit. I expect you to be taking care of your mental state by reading. You read professionally, but also because you're a member of the profession of arms. Educate yourself on the profession of arms, but also read for relaxation. Spiritually, however you see fit to do that, because we couldn't proselytize for in the church, but spiritually, even if you're an atheist, you have a spiritual self you have to take care of, and then take care of your family. And I want you to do that for the mission. Yeah. Because if you don't do that, you won't be ready to do the mission when I ask you to put it all on the line. And so I made it very clear that, there's all kinds of cute saying, mission first, people always, okay. But for me, it was mission first, period. But take care of yourself. And then as a leader, it's one thing to say that, and then they never see you at the gym. or they never see you out running in the morning, or never see you at church on Sunday. And because I worked with some soldiers when I was in the Pentagon, they insisted I went to the gym every day at lunch. I mean, the Army is really big on PT. The Air Force, not so much on physical training.
Surprising coming from a Marine.
So I got in the habit. And one of the coolest things happened to me, I was in command at the 9th Wing, and I was at the gym at lunch because I wanted to be there when you're visible. And one of the guys that worked for me came up to me and he just says, "Sir, I want to interrupt your workout, but I just want to thank you." I said, "Why?" He says, "Well, a lot of guys tell us we need to stay in shape. You're over here working out, and that means a lot to us. And so you got to walk the walk."
Yeah, you got to model the leadership yourself.
Yeah. When we lived on base, if we could walk to church, we walked to church.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to see people seeing the Chilton family walking to Mass. And we were taking care of that spiritual side of our house.
That's a great takeaway.
And I think that's important for leaders you're in a fishbowl anyway.
Right.
Everybody's watching you. So they're watching whether or not you do what you are asking them to do.
And it's a good reminder to keep that in mind, because I think we lose sight of the fact that people are always watching, whether it's your kids, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your employees.
Right.
They're always watching and taking note.
Yeah. And if you're wearing a uniform with rank on it,
they're
really watching you. That's true about the cloth, priests and nuns, when they're in their robes, people take notice.
Yeah.
And so they're in a fishbowl. They live in a fishbowl their whole lives. And that can be a blessing and a burden, right?
Yeah. Well, let's shift to space.
Sure.
How did you get involved in NASA? I mean, I assume it wasn't just an application you applied for, but you were selected.
It kind of was. I mean, it was, again, I kept every assignment that I would take. I said, I want to go do that, and then I'll get out, and then I'll get out. Well, I was a test pilot down in Florida, and a friend of mine who actually had taught me how to fly F-15s when we were stationed in Okinawa, he had gone to test pilot school. And when he was there, I called him up. I said, "So how do you like it?" And he says, "That's pretty cool. Yeah, I think you'd like it." So I went. He got assigned to Florida. I got assigned to Florida. And we're serving together down there as test pilots. And then NASA had an application that year and hired astronauts. And everybody in the squadron applied except me. They said, "Why aren't you applying?" And I said, "Well, I just graduated from test pilot school. I want to be a test pilot. I don't want to be an astronaut. I spent a year training for this. I want to do it." Well, Brian had already been down there as a couple of years, and he applied and got selected. So 2.5 years later, NASA, right after Challenger, announces they're going to have another selection. And so I called him up. I said, "So how do you like being an astronaut?" And he says, "It's pretty fun. You should apply." So I wasn't sure I wanted to do it, but I thought, let's just see. And it'll sound arrogant, but it was really ignorance, because I didn't know when I got selected to interview, which was a great honor. I was kind of going to interview them as well to see if this was something I wanted to do. And it's a week-long interview, lots of physicals and mental stuff and opportunities and interviews. And when I finished that week, I came back to Florida. I thought, "Oh, dear Lord, I hope they pick me." And I was just so impressed by NASA, that what they did and what the astronauts did. They didn't just fly in space. They had all kinds of jobs around the Space Center there, working in mission control, working down launch operations at Kennedy, working in the software labs, or interfacing with contractors. It was really interesting work. And so I was really, really blessed.
And so you went to space 3 times?
Yes. Yeah, I had 3 shuttle flights, 3 shuttle missions.
Yeah.
Right.
Walk us through each of those.
Well, the first one was pretty fun. I always say it starts in a bar. A good story start in a bar. We had a bar right outside the gate.
The Marine Corps started in a bar too.
Yeah, I know. I knew you'd resonate with that, Steve. Right outside the gate at the Johnson Space Center, there was no military structure there, so there was no officers or enlisted club, but there was this old rundown bar called the Outpost Tavern. And on Fridays, the astronauts would gather there the secretaries would gather there, the engineers would gather there, the scientists would gather. Everybody would just go there to, have a long neck. And actually more work got done there, I think, than during the week, because you didn't have to get on anybody's calendar. Yeah. You just went over. And so I'm in the bar on Friday, and one of the flight directors is sitting there at a table, another guy, literally with a napkin, scribbling on a napkin, I walked up to him. I said, "So what are you working on, Al?" And he said, "Well, they just launched a satellite out of Cape Canaveral, and it malfunctioned. The rocket malfunctioned, and the satellite is stuck in a 300-mile orbit around the Earth. It's supposed to be a geosynchronous, which is 22,000 miles above the Earth. And so we're working out a plan to use the space shuttle to carry up a rocket motor and attach it to the satellite so it can go up to its intended orbit. And we're planning it for the first flight of Endeavour." Well, Endeavour was under construction at the time. I thought, well, that's interesting. Good luck. About a year and a half later, I get a call from the chief of the astronaut office. Says, "Hey, how would you like to be the pilot on Endeavour's maiden voyage? We're going up to rescue a satellite." So that napkin turned into reality. Yeah. And that was my first flight. And it was an exciting mission. I was the only rookie. And so that was fun. The rest of the crew was experienced, and they were just such a great crew. And it was a really challenging mission, and Endeavour flew great, thank goodness, because we had a lot of issues capturing that satellite, which was never designed to be captured. But we worked through them. We did some things, kind of threw the book out once we got on orbit and failed a couple times, and just re-engineered the way to do it. And we did things that had never been done before, and the mission control approved it and came up with a plan and executed it and successfully captured the satellite and launched it. I mean, that was exciting.
It really seems like going to space, you have to be a master problem solver. Because,
well, in that case, we did, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, people are managing it or observing what's going on from a distance. Mm-hmm. Can't, send you tools or can't, you're kind of rewriting the playbook, it would seem. Is that the case on every mission where
on that mission, it certainly was. I mean, we literally threw out everything we trained to do and did something completely different. And that was problem solving. After the second failed attempt, a group of us stayed up all night. We stayed up for 24 hours, just going through problem solving 101 to find the problem. What do you have for tools at hand? Brainstorm. Red team the brainstorm until you narrow it down to something. Think of all the reasons the ground's going to say, no, you can't do that. And then tell the ground what you're thinking about. And they went off and improved on our plan, made some minor modifications, and turned us loose to do it. And it was problem solving 101. But I'll never forget when I came back from that flight, there was a press thing when we arrived back in Houston, and a reporter sticks a mic in my face. He says, "Your first flight on a brand new space shuttle, you have all these things go wrong and you guys pull it off. How do you top that?" And I said, "Well, I'd really like to fly on a spaceship where everything goes exactly right." Because I want to do a mission where I'm much more relaxed, because it was not a relaxing mission. We were working hard.
Well, there's no safety net there either. It's not like something happens and you all can just parachute down. I mean,
well, we weren't in danger. Our lives weren't in danger, unlike Apollo 13, for example. But mission success was in danger. And that was, I think if you interview any astronaut, they'll tell you their greatest fear is not death. It's letting your team down personally, or failure, letting NASA down, letting the country down. That's what you fear. And so we were afraid of failure that whole time. And when the team was successful, it was a great feeling. But man, it was tense for a long time up there. And so I said, next time I just want it to be, flown as briefed. And it was. The second flight was a great science mission. We carried a giant radar up in the cargo bay, pointed that at the Earth, and took radar images of the Earth while we took optical images with handheld photography. And it was so successful, they actually flew that radar 2 more times, improved it, and mapped the entire Earth from landmass of the Earth from 57 north to 57 south latitude with, I think it was 10-meter resolution. Through foliage, the radar would penetrate through jungles it's unbelievably successful science mission, and we flew the first proof of concept, and then they added onto it 2 more shuttle missions. So that's
just
really
crazy technology that is still mind blowing.
It was at the time. It was breakthrough. Now they've got better stuff than that now. Certainly smaller, but it was. And then my third mission was very surreal. I was a Cold Warrior for most of my career, certainly as a fighter pilot. And
what does that mean to you?
Well, it was us versus the Soviet Union. We were training to go to war with them in Europe.
Cold War warrior.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a hot war.
Yeah.
So it was during the Cold War. And, when I was stationed in New Mexico flying F-15s, we deployed for a month to Europe to our bed down where we were going to fight the Soviets if they came across out of Eastern Germany, across through the Fulda Gap. We were focused on defending Western Europe and South Korea. And I spent a lot of time up in South Korea, flying up there as part of the defense of that peninsula. And so the Russians were our enemy. The Soviets were our enemy. Well, my third mission was to fly the space shuttle Atlantis up to the Russian space station Mir and dock to it. And one of my crewmates, Shannon Lucid, had spent 2 years in Russia. This was after the fall of the Soviet Union, and NASA made a deal with Roscosmos that we could, build some modules that would allow an interface and actually send astronauts to Mir, U.S. astronauts, and dock the shuttle to it. And it was a learning experience for us as we got ready to build the International Space Station later in the 90s. And so this was the third rendezvous and docking with Mir, and I got to go to Russia and train at Star City with the cosmonauts. I had to learn enough Russian to be polite and, keywords like fire and leak, and they had to do the same. And they came and trained with us in the United States on the shuttle simulators. And, the commander of Mir, my counterpart, I was the commander of Atlantis. He had flown Su-17s in the Soviet Far East when I was flying F-15s in Okinawa. His job was to drop a bomb on my head, and my job was to kill him. And here we're crewmates now. We're teammates.
Tide turns.
And getting along just fine. And his backup commander was a MiG-23 pilot in East Germany, and my pilot, Rick Searfoss, was an F-111 guy out of Lakenheath, and roles were reversed there. And now we're colleagues and, building relationships. So it was a unique mission. It was really special, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to do that. You
had one, though, really specific thing that you would bring with you to space on 3 occasions.
Yes, I did. And it all started with one night when I was working down at the Kennedy Space Center supporting launch operations. Another astronaut colleague, a gentleman named David Lowe, David Lowe, is a Catholic man, a very devout Catholic man. And he and I were just sitting up one night late, just the 2 of us in a briefing room down there and just talking about life. And he was senior to me. He had already flown in space. And in the course of that conversation, sharing our faith and different things, he said he had taken the Eucharist with him to space on his first flight. And I thought, wow, just how special that must have been. And so that night I said, if I ever get picked to fly, because it's not a slam dunk, but if I ever have the opportunity to fly, I'm going to see if I can do that. And so on my first flight, the maiden flight of Endeavour, I went through my parish priest, was given the opportunity to take 2 hosts with me because one of my other crewmates was Catholic, and I talked to him about it. He said, absolutely. And interestingly, I believe we received the Eucharist on orbit after our first 2 failures.
Wow.
And then succeeded.
Or right before your final success.
Yeah, in between, yeah. And then on my second flight, there was 3 of us. My commander, Sid Gutierrez, and Tom Jones was his rookie flight. Tom was a mission specialist. And I was the pilot on that flight as well, which is NASA for co-pilot. And the 3 of us received the Eucharist on that flight, which was a very special moment. And then on the last flight, there was one other gentleman, Ron Sega was my crewmate. And he and I received the Eucharist while we were up there too. And each time was for a special moment, just a really special moment that, inspired us to say, now's the time to do it. But just, with my faith, my belief in the Eucharist, my belief in everything that I've been taught, in the Catholic religion, to be able to be looking down on God's creation and receive the body of Christ. Yeah. And this unique environment, beautiful, beautiful views of the earth, things you'll never see again in your lifetime, so there's unique opportunities. And perspective-wise, gave me some interesting perspective on my life. One example, every astronaut wants to take a picture of their hometown, right?
Of course.
You got to come back. So LA is my hood. So, I knew exactly what day on my first mission we'd fly over Los Angeles. And so, I'd set all kinds of alarms that day, position cameras by the windows. And sure, talk about a miracle. We're coming up from the Southwest, see the coast of California coming, see Los Angeles. It was clear, no smog. That's a miracle, from when I grew up.
True miracle in California.
Miracle, yeah. And it's just gorgeous. And I'm immediately taking pictures with all different kinds of zoom lenses and stuff. And then I put the cameras down and just looked out, and I stuck my hand out, stuck my thumb out, closed one eye, and covered up 6 million people under my thumb.
That's mind-blowing.
Yeah. And I thought, I was one of those people. And it was when I was a kid and in high school, and thought I had the world's greatest problems, as a teenager, whatever. And every one of those people under my thumb right now, they got problems in their lives. I like to use a Marine or Army term here. We all have rocks in our rucksack. Some people carry pebbles around with them. Some people carry boulders around in their rucksack. And you never know what they have in their rucksack when you first run into them, a stranger, or you first meet somebody. And, I thought about that, but I'm going to give people the benefit of the doubt when I meet them. And maybe they're a little rude to me or whatever, but I'm going to give them some grace for that, because I don't know what they're carrying around in their lives. And I know what I'm carrying around, and trust me, I know it's not that heavy. Yeah. There's rocks in there, but they're not. Some people got boulders. And then the other thing that occurred to me, and this is all happening at this, really fast, because you don't have a lot of hang time when you're traveling as fast as we are up there. I thought about, God loves every one of those people under my thumb, and not as a group, individually. And not only that, he loves me individually, and he loves the 7.5 billion people on the planet individually. And it was just a moment that made me feel so small and humble.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that.
Wow.
And I got a good picture at Dodger Stadium, too. My team.
We just had Artemis go
great?
to space. Do something that's never been done, right? Or hasn't been done.
Yeah.
If you got an opportunity to sit down with those 4 astronauts, mm-hmm. what advice would you give them that they might not have been taught by their instructors, or perhaps perspective, or, what's that nugget that having been there?
Yeah, no, listen, they're so much more prepared than to do the mission they're doing that I could ever give advice on. But I would reflect on some advice I got from a flown astronaut. His name was Pinky Nelson. And when we were, my cohort, there was 15 of us in the class that came in 1987. The engineers would teach us something about a system on the shuttle. The mission controllers would come in and say how it operated in different things. And then they have an astronaut who'd flown come in and tell you kind of their perspective on that particular. Well, Pinky was talking to our class, and he left a nugget that I thought was so special. He said, just remember, remember, this is a unique opportunity you'll have to go up there. And you've got to have a plan to smell the roses. Okay. So, in life, you got to stop and smell the roses. He says, if you don't train to smell the roses and just train to do the mission, you're going to come back and no matter how successful you are, people are going to say, well, what was it like? What did you see? You're going to say, nothing, because I was so focused on the mission. So think about something that you would like to see, or certain parts of when you're training, when you have an opportunity to look out the window in the simulator. Build that habit pattern, or that day in the timeline. Set the cameras up around the window and take a picture of your hometown. Have a plan to enjoy the uniqueness of this opportunity. You're going to get the mission done.
Which is a lesson we can take in everyday life.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. If all you're focused on is getting the job done, and don't pick your head up and look around and, get up early and watch a beautiful sunrise, or stay up and watch a beautiful sunset, or spend time with your family. And so many things that, we can be overwhelmed by our schedule, just like you can on a mission. You need to plan how you're going to fit the beauty of life into your schedule. And for us, it was the beauty of space flight. And I thought that was really good advice. And I took it to heart. Well,
you had a lifetime of military training. You're retired now, but still very active and running on many boards, speaking at different engagements. What is core to your daily routine that keeps you as sharp as you are? And
well, I'm getting duller by the minute.
Well, I wouldn't be able to tell that, but
oh, it's my wife, without a doubt, Kathy. She holds me accountable. She's she works out every day. She exercises every day.
And therefore, you do next.
Well, if I don't, I kind of get the eye, and she gets up every morning and spends at least an hour, if not more, in prayer. She has her prayer room upstairs. She set it up. And, she's got her icons there and her routine, the things she listens to on various apps, and the readings she does. And she knows how to prioritize things in life better than I do. And part of that's staying in shape, staying physically fit. It's kind of goes back to the things I insisted my subordinates did in command, take care of your body, take care of your mind, take care of your spirit, take care of your family. And she's a master at that. So oftentimes I'm in my office just because I'm behind and at work or whatever, and she'll come in and say, "You need to go work out." And she's got me. Now I get up in the morning, and I didn't used to do this. I'm just not a morning person. But I'll get up and I'm doing Bible in a Year right now on the Hallow app list on the mic.
On the mic, yeah.
And we joke, we say, yeah, it'll be Bible in 2 years. I know you. But I'm on day like 104 now. And,
congratulations. It's great.
And, once good habits, once you get into them, you start to enjoy them.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like you can do the same with bad habits too, right? Sleeping in and not doing it, or, immediately getting up and jumping on work, as opposed to putting a little time aside for the Lord in the morning routinely. And then, and so Kathy's been my inspiration for that. She's my inspiration when I stop working out. I start prioritizing other things. She keeps
you aligned.
She does.
Beautiful.
Like I said, she was a 2-star in the Air Force. I was a 4-star, but at home she was the 5-star. She still is.
Beautiful. Well, General Chilton, thank you for joining me and sharing your story.
You bet, Stephen. It's great to be with you always.
Semper Fi.
Semper Fi.